The sky over Los Angeles looked like it was about to collapse that night. The city of lights and dreams was covered in dark clouds, and the rain fell hard, turning sidewalks into silent rivers. It was around 10 p.m. when Keanu Reeves left the studio after a script reading. He wasn't in a hurry. As usual, he preferred to drive alone, windows slightly down, his mind drifting, far from fame, far from cameras, far from the invisible weight of being a quiet symbol of strength for millions. As he stopped at a red light near a quieter avenue, Keanu noticed something to his right, near the entrance of a closed store. A boy, no older than 15, huddled under the awning, soaked, wearing a thin sweatshirt and a pair of torn sneakers. The boy's pale face trembled beneath the rain, and his eyes were fixed on a plastic cup in front of him, hoping someone had left a few coins. Keanu froze. Something in that look hit him like a punch. It was familiar. A kind of helplessness, he understood, even if he hadn't lived it exactly the same way. The light turned green, but he didn't move. He turned right and pulled up in front of the boy. He got out slowly, making no sudden moves. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, crouching down to meet the boy's eyes. The boy instinctively backed away, like a wounded animal that had been hit too many times to trust an outstretched hand. "I don't want any trouble," the boy muttered. "Neither do I. Just want to help," Keanu said, taking off his coat and offering it. "It's cold. What's your name?" "Eli," the boy replied, hesitant. "Eli, do you have anywhere to sleep tonight?" The boy's silence was answer enough. Keanu stayed quiet for a moment. He knew it was crazy. He knew what any sensible person would say. But he also knew that sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a single chance, a hand offered at the right moment. "I've got a spare room at my place. You can take a hot shower, eat something, sleep in a real bed. After that, if you want to leave, that's okay. No pressure." Eli looked at him with suspicion.
But there was something different about this man.
He wasn't handing out a shelter flyer or saying it'll be okay just to disappear afterward. He was there, standing in the rain, getting soaked for someone he didn't even know. "I'm not a thief," Eli said, lowering his eyes. "And I'm not a judge," Keanu replied, opening the car door. Minutes later, they were on their way to Keanu's home, a discreet but cozy house in the Hollywood Hills. The sound of rain on the windows blended with the tense silence inside the car. Eli kept his hands in his pockets, trying to hide the shivers from cold and fear. Keanu, on the other hand, was calm. He drove with the steady hand of someone who had already made a decision with his heart. When they arrived, Keanu showed him around the house with simplicity. No flashy luxury, no cameras, no staff walking around. Just him, the boy, and a mutual act of trust that, despite the strangeness, was beginning to take shape. "You can use the bathroom there. There's a clean towel. After that, I'll cook something. Do you like pasta?" Eli nodded shyly. When he returned from the shower, wearing clean clothes left on the bed, he found Keanu in the kitchen, casually preparing dinner as if this were an old routine. They sat down together. At first, the boy ate quickly, like someone unsure whether any of this was real. Keanu, patient, spoke little, listening more than talking. That night, Eli slept in a bed for the first time in months. The last image before his eyes closed was the ceiling softly lit by a warm yellow light and the sound of rain outside. Not an enemy anymore, but a distant lullaby. For the first time, he felt there might still be hope for someone like him. Neither of them knew that this decision, seemingly simple, would change everything. For better, and for worse. 3 days had passed since that rainy night. The sky over Los Angeles was now clear, but the atmosphere inside Keanu's house remained heavy. Eli was still a quiet presence. Polite, but distant, he moved through the house as if he were an intruder in sacred territory. Every movement was careful. He didn't touch anything without permission, didn't eat anything that wasn't offered. He slept little, woke early, and never spoke of the past, not that he needed to. His eyes told everything his mouth couldn't. Keanu, on the other hand, tried to balance his public life with the moral commitment he had taken on. Between shoots, meetings, and social obligations, he came home each day with a bag of groceries or books for Eli, trying to find a middle ground between kindness and realism. But not everyone saw it as altruism. "This is going to blow up in your face," said Derek on the fourth day, slamming the front door as he arrived. Keanu had been expecting him. He knew his cousin would come, and he knew he'd bring sharp words. "I asked you to let me know before you show up," Keanu said, trying to stay calm. "And I asked you not to turn your house into a juvenile rehab center. But here we are." Eli, who was listening from the living room, shrank back. Keanu noticed. The tension was cutting through the air like a blade. "Derek, he can hear you. Watch your words." "Good. Let him hear. Maybe then he'll understand this isn't a fairy tale. This is Hollywood, Keanu. You're a name. A brand. One scandal is all it takes to end your career. And that kid? He's going to bury you. He has a name.
Eli.
And he doesn't owe me anything." Keanu replied, eyes steady. "You're blind. Just like always when you decide to play the hero. What if he takes a picture of you sleeping and leaks it? Or steals something and sells it to the press? You're risking way too much. You talk like he's a criminal. And how do you know he's not?" The silence that followed was brutal.
Keanu didn't respond.
He looked at Eli, standing in the corner of the room, eyes down. The wound had already been made. Derek turned and walked into the kitchen, opening the fridge like he owned the place. He grabbed a bottle of water, took a sip, and with sarcasm still heavy in his voice, added, "Oh, and you should check your cameras. The one in the hallway is off. Coincidence?" "I turned it off," Keanu said. Eli felt too watched. "I thought it was fair." Derek laughed. "Incredible. You shut down your only security to protect the kid you don't even know." Keanu crossed his arms, tired of the argument. But before he could speak, Eli broke the silence. "I can leave." His voice was firm, but carried a quiet sadness. "I don't want to cause trouble, or come between you and your cousin. If you want me gone." Keanu stepped closer, kneeling in front of the boy. "You're not going anywhere, Eli. This is your home for as long as you want it to be, and no one's going to treat you like trash while I'm here." Derek shook his head, laughing in disbelief. "You're hopeless." And he left, slamming the door behind him. In the days that followed, Derek's presence lingered like a shadow. Dry messages, calls filled with veiled accusations, threats to expose the situation to the press. Keanu stood firm, but the toll was beginning to show. Eli's eyes had darkened again. Trust was slowly eroding. On the sixth night, something happened. Keanu was returning from set when he noticed the door to the library slightly ajar. It was a room he rarely used, but inside, he kept a few valuable items: paintings, old photographs, and a small collection of rare watches inherited from his father. As he entered, a chill ran down his spine. The display case was open. One watch was missing, the most valuable one. Immediately, he ran to the office. The small black notebook where he wrote personal reflections and kept important passwords was also gone. Instinctively, he went to Eli's room. It was empty. The bed was made. No sign of him. Keanu's heart raced. Derek. That was the first name that came to mind. But what if he was wrong? He ran to the living room and activated the camera system. The hallway one was still disabled, but the front entrance camera was working. There it was in the footage, a small figure, hooded, slipping out the front door at exactly 3:12 a.m. Everything pointed to Eli. Keanu's phone vibrated. A message from Derek. "Told you so." Keanu closed his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he felt betrayed. Or had he been fooled? The doubt tore at him. It wasn't just the watch or the notebook. It was the trust. The idea that maybe Derek had been right all along. And out on the streets, Eli was walking again, unaware that he was about to become the prime suspect in a crime he didn't commit, and that someone much closer was plotting against him. Morning light filtered through the window, but Keanu hadn't slept a single minute. He sat in the living room, the black notebook still missing, and the display case, where his family heirloom once gleamed, now held only a cold, empty space. The images from the security footage still played in his mind, the hooded figure slipping silently out the front door, almost invisible. He wanted to deny it, wanted with every fiber of his being to believe there was another explanation. But everything, absolutely everything, pointed to Eli. Around 9 a.m., the doorbell rang. It was Derek. "So? Have you swallowed the truth yet? Or are you still pretending this is just a misunderstanding?" he asked, walking in without an invitation. "That doesn't prove anything," Keanu replied, exhausted but still resisting the certainty that was starting to poison his mind. A rare watch gone. A street kid who disappears the same night. And a camera which, surprise, he knew was off. Doesn't take a genius, cousin. Keanu looked away. The pain of betrayal, if it truly was betrayal, cut deeper than he'd expected. It wasn't just disappointment. He felt foolish.
Exposed.
"Maybe someone set him up," he murmured. "Why? Who would set this up?" "Me?" Derek asked with a mocking laugh. "Seriously, Keanu? You'd rather believe I robbed you than accept that this kid just took advantage of your kindness?" Keanu didn't answer, but Derek saw the doubt, and he fed on it. "Look, I can take care of this for you. I've got contacts. If you give me the kid's full name, we can track him down, call the police, recover what we can, and close this chapter." Keanu hesitated. The name was on the tip of his tongue, but something held him back. Derek laughed again. "You're unbelievable. The kid robs you, vanishes, and you're still trying to protect him. That's not kindness. That's stupidity and weakness." Those words stung more than the theft. Keanu stood, facing his cousin. "Get out of my house." "What?" "You heard me. Get out of my house, Derek." The silence that followed was thick. Derek looked at him like he was seeing a madman. "When he destroys your reputation, don't say I didn't warn you." And he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Keanu sank into the couch. He was at his limit. He picked up his phone, searching for news. Nothing yet. No report, no scandal. The watch was valuable, yes, but discreet. The notebook, even more personal. Their absence left an emotional wound, not just a material one. Eli still hadn't reappeared. Later that day, Keanu visited a nonprofit he'd donated to years before. He discreetly showed a photo of the boy, taken from his security system days earlier. "Yeah, he came by a few times," a social worker said. "But he never stayed. Avoids anything that looks official. Says he doesn't trust any system. If he shows up again, please call me." Meanwhile, whispers from the media had begun. Not about the theft, not yet, but about Keanu housing a homeless minor. A gossip blog mentioned a possible illegal protection scandal. Subtle, but threatening. Social media was split. Some praised Keanu as a humanitarian hero. Others saw him as reckless, vulnerable, even suspicious. That evening, Keanu's phone rang. It was a pawn shop in Santa Monica. "Mr. Keanu Reeves? One of our clerks recognized your name engraved on the inside of a watch brought in this afternoon." It seemed odd, since it's a rare piece, and the guy seemed nervous. "Who was he?" Keanu asked, heart pounding. "Well, it wasn't a kid. It was a man. White, around 30. Had tattoos on his arm. Gave us a fake contact number. But our security camera got everything." Keanu froze. 30 years old? Tattoos? It wasn't Eli. In that instant, the pieces began to fall into place. Slowly. Cruelly. The disabled hallway camera. Derek's insistence on handling everything. The mocking laugh, the contempt for the boy, and the way he showed up the next morning, like he already knew what had happened. Keanu felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Maybe Eli wasn't guilty. Maybe he ran not because he did something wrong, but because he'd been accused unjustly. Maybe he was out there, alone, thinking the only man who ever believed in him had now abandoned him too. And that, more than the theft, tore Keanu apart. On the computer screen, the pawn shop's footage was paused. It wasn't Eli, and Keanu recognized that face. It was Derek. The image was frozen on the screen. Derek, wearing a black cap, scruffy beard, and a nervous look, holding the gold watch with the inscription engraved on the back. "RR to KR, you are the time that makes everything worthwhile." a keepsake from Keanu's father. One of the few things he never thought he'd lose, or that someone close to him would have the nerve to take. Keanu felt his stomach churn. It took him a few minutes just to breathe. The betrayal was worse than any physical wound. Worse still was the knowledge that, while he protected Eli from accusations, it was Derek who threw him to the wolves. His hands trembled as he grabbed the car keys. He started the engine without thinking. He knew where to find Derek. He always went back to the same bar downtown, the kind of place where dirty deals were made between cigarettes and grimy glasses. Keanu arrived just after 10 p.m. The rain had started again, light and cutting. Keanu stepped inside. The place smelled of cheap alcohol and stale testosterone. In the corner, as expected, there he was, Derek, laughing loudly with two unknown men, an almost empty bottle of whiskey in front of him. When he saw Keanu approaching, his smile faded. Well, look who's here. The pure-hearted superhero. Here to give me a moral lesson now. Keanu said nothing. He just threw a printed photo from the pawn shop onto the table. Derek looked at it, then laughed, but now with bitterness.
Ah,
so you found it. Why? Keanu asked, voice low but steady. Why do this? Derek leaned back in his chair, eyes red from alcohol and arrogance. Because I know you, Keanu. I know who you are. You live in that fantasy world where everyone deserves a chance, where everyone has a good heart, even when they're knee-deep in the mud. And worse, you risk everything, your safety, your reputation, your own peace, for a kid you met in the rain. Keanu stepped closer, his eyes burning. So you steal from me, to prove I was wrong? I didn't steal. I tested you. You framed a 15-year-old boy. I protected you. From yourself. Because you don't know how to say no, Keanu. Never have. You keep trying to save the world when you barely can save yourself. Silence. Derek continued. And let's be honest, that kid? He would have screwed you over eventually. I just sped up the process. Keanu took a deep breath. He wanted to break something. Wanted to scream. But not there.
not like that.
He just leaned over the table. I'm going to get everything back. The watch. The notebook. And when I find Eli, I'm going to apologize because the worst thing I did was let you talk to him. And he left. In the hours that followed, Keanu contacted his lawyer and personal security. Quietly, he armed himself with the truth to fix what had been allowed to happen. The watch was recovered. The notebook, too. Derek was formally notified of charges for theft and defamation. But none of that mattered without Eli. He wasn't answering calls. Not showing up at shelters.
He was gone.
Keanu retraced paths, walked alleys and underpasses. Gave his number to social workers, police officers, and homeless people. Showed photos. And most importantly, began telling the truth. About what had happened. About the mistake he had made. On the 8th day, near sunrise, he finally got a call. The kid you're looking for, I think he's here. Sleeping under the 7th Street Bridge.
He's sick.
Weak. Keanu didn't waste a second. He arrived just before 6. The city was still yawning. The sky held a grayish tone that preceded the day. And there, curled up in a concrete corner, among torn blankets, was Eli.
Pale. Thin.
With sunken eyes and hands trembling with fever. Keanu knelt beside him. Eli. The boy opened his eyes slowly. When he saw Keanu, he tried to stand but couldn't. There was no anger or pain in his eyes. Only disappointment and fear. I swear I didn't take anything. I know, Keanu replied, swallowing tears. I know it wasn't you. The silence lasted forever. Why did you believe him? Eli whispered weakly. I thought you were different. So did I. And I failed you. Forgive me. Eli didn't answer, but tears filled his eyes. For the first time, without running away, Keanu carefully picked him up in his arms, called an ambulance, went with him to the hospital, slept in a chair beside the bed as Eli received fluids, medication, and tests. There was no more doubt. Now, all that mattered was fixing what remained, and proving, through actions, that broken trust, even the most fragile, can be rebuilt with truth and humanity. The morning seemed brighter than ever when Eli was discharged from the hospital. The Los Angeles sun shone strong, reflecting a new beginning, fragile, yet genuine. Keanu was by his side, steady and silent, carrying not only the responsibility of a friend, but the commitment of a mentor. For days, he sought support for the boy, connecting with social workers, reintegration programs, classes, and psychological counseling. Eli, in turn, was a mix of caution and hope. He still carried the scars of abandonment, false accusations, and loneliness, but he was willing to try, for the first time in his life, to believe that someone truly wanted to see him grow. The first challenge was trust. Harder than any concrete wall was breaking down the internal barriers built by pain and fear. But little by little, routine began to take shape. Waking up early, studying, attending support groups, meeting people who didn't judge him by his torn clothes or the story told in his eyes. And, above all, feeling he was no longer alone. Keanu followed every step, never intrusive, but always present. On afternoons when doubt tried to creep back, he reminded Eli of what he had already achieved. "You're not the boy who was out in the rain," he said. "You're the young man building his own path." Over time, Eli got involved in a social educator program, motivated to help other youth experiencing homelessness, giving a voice to those who still had no hope. And in every meeting, every story shared, he found strength to heal and to turn pain into light. Derek? He was permanently removed from Keanu's life. The betrayal by the closest family member was a hard blow but served to reinforce the importance of truth and conscious choice. Years later, Eli took the stage at a conference on youth and vulnerability with steady eyes and a confident voice. He spoke about his journey, about mistakes, forgiveness, and rebirth. And he ended with a phrase that resonated through the audience and everyone listening. "Sometimes, all we need is someone who believes in us, even when no one else does." Keanu watched from the front row, proud, knowing that the story of rain and mistrust had turned into a powerful lesson in humanity. Because, in the end, it's not the storms that define who we are, but the shelter we offer and the courage to start over.